Molly Murray here with Molly Murray Birth, Life, and Business Doula. I wanted to jump on live and have a discussion with you all about the importance of choosing a supportive care provider and knowing your options in pregnancy, birth, and beyond, and a little bit about writing a birth plan. So just give me a couple seconds to share this over on my wall. And make sure that it's kind of getting out there. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I had a meet the backup doulas meeting with my two backup doulas, Chalisa Clifton and Lori Jockers, at Panera Bread. And it was a really good turnout. There were 3 moms there, and we had a nice discussion, which kind of inspired this live post, actually. Okay, so just sharing it over on my wall. Hello, I am just sharing my post over on my wall. So here we are. I wanted to share a little bit about choosing, not a little bit, but I really wanted to dive in and have a discussion with you about choosing a supportive care provider and birth options, knowing your birth options, and writing a birth plan or not. So that's really going to be a big part of this. So I have a couple notes here. The takeaway that I want you to take from this video is that you have options. There are so many amazing providers in our area. The list is it's ever growing. It's always increasing of supportive care providers. We are really lucky here in Cincinnati. Often when women first get pregnant, they ask their friends and family and mothers and mother friends who their care provider is. Or maybe they go to the same care provider that they've always been going to since the time that they were adolescents, and now they're pregnant, and so they continue on with seeing this provider that they've been seeing since the beginning of time, and maybe their mom went there and their sister went there, and it's just like who the family OBGYN. And I would say look into your options. If you've been going to your provider forever, that's wonderful. But I think that it's important to note that you and your care provider should be on the same page as far as birth goes. And there are questions to ask that you can kind of just decipher whether you are on the same page and whether your wishes for your birth line up with their standard practice. So I am absolutely open to questions throughout this. I really would love our time together to be a productive discussion for you, and any questions that you have answered. If I can't answer them now, I will come back later. So thinking about questions to ask your care provider. There is a fantastic list of questions to ask your care provider that is on the Cincinnati Area Doula Society website. And I have referred to this for several years now. So I'm just going to read you a couple of them. And actually, I'm not. I'm going to go off of what I've seen is some of the big maybe points of contention towards the end of pregnancy. So asking what is their standard of care in regards to how many weeks can I go in my pregnancy. So is your care provider more comfortable with 40 weeks, 41 weeks, 42 weeks? So really being upfront in questioning, like, how long can I go in my pregnancy before you're going to want to induce? I love that there's a care provider in the area that instead of saying when they'll induce. Like, they don't really put a date on it. They don't say, oh, at 42 weeks or at 41 weeks, we're going to need to induce. Instead, they say it really depends on how you and baby are doing. Isn't that beautiful? It really depends on how you and baby are doing. And beyond 40, throughout the pregnancy, we're keeping an eye on baby and you as a mother. So I think it's really great that some care providers have this discussion at 41 weeks. How is baby doing? Let's take a peek with the non-stress test, maybe even coming in twice a week at 42 weeks for the non-stress test to really determine, is baby thriving in the womb, or is it better to move things along? We know the evidence backs this up, that first-time mothers, who are induced have a nearly double rate of cesarean. So, cesarean isn't always awful by any means. There's lots of cesareans that are wonderful. There's lots of medically necessary cesareans. I am very much a person and doula that is supportive of, no matter what you do to birth your baby, mothers do what they have to do to birth their baby. And the best interest is always in how is mom doing and how is baby doing. But getting on the same page with your care provider early on, how many weeks of pregnancy can I go, and is that determined by weeks, or is that determined by how is mom doing, how is baby doing? And then what are some of their standards practices? Things that are on birth plans are often like, do I have to have an IV, or can I have what's called a saline lock or a HEP lock that just holds the place for if an IV is needed, then it's already there. But some practices do require an IV, so talking about that beforehand, so it's not a point of contention at the birth. And then fetal monitoring is continuous fetal monitoring. So is continuous fetal monitoring something that is required, or can I have what's called intermittent fetal monitoring, where you get maybe, I want to say it's 20 minutes out of every hour. So you go 40 minutes without monitoring, 20 minutes of monitoring. And some are even less than that. Some care providers and practices will use a Doppler, and they just want to listen. I want to say it's before a contraction, during a contraction, after a contraction. But it's really important to have this discussion with your care provider. As a doula, I'm not providing any medical advice, and I am purely physical and emotional support. So I always have the caveat of ask your care provider. And how long can I labor? Is there a cap on how long I can be in labor before you're going to suggest moving things along, either in the way of augmenting labor, or am I allowed to labor so long, again, as I and baby are doing okay? Another thing is like vaginal exams. That's an option that you can ask for minimal vaginal exams at the end of pregnancy, or absolutely none. They're really not telling you anything. The cervix is not a crystal, or it's not a magic ball, or like it's just really not telling us much. They are measuring dilation, effacement, the baby's station and position, and a lot of that can be monitored from the outside. And really, even if you're 3 to 4 centimeters at 37 weeks, that doesn't mean that you're going to go early or even go fast. I mean, sometimes you do go faster, but hello, Samantha. I'm talking about choosing a supportive care provider, and Samantha is a great example of this, because I want to say Samantha switched to a more supportive care provider in her pregnancy, and then stayed with them through one pregnancy and birth, and then the next pregnancy and birth. I would say that some care providers are more hands-on in their approach, and some are more hands-off. And so finding what fits your personality and what fits your birth wishes. There's really no way of me telling you who's the right care provider with you, for you, and there's really no way for you to decide who the right care provider for you is until you talk about and think about your birth wishes. So that brings us to writing a birth plan. And I want to reiterate that writing a birth plan does not cover up having a care provider that standard of care is to induce right at 30, induce right at 39 or 40 weeks, does the maximum amount of vaginal exams at the end, requires fetal monitoring continuously, and an IV. Of course, if those are all necessary, even with a really naturally supportive care provider, if it's medically necessary for you or baby, that's always what we're thinking about. But if it's not, if you're doing okay, baby's doing okay, and the doctor midwife standard of care is continuous fetal monitoring, and IV, vaginal exams, staying in bed, and you're only allowed to have a certain amount of labor before they augment or go to a certain point in your pregnancy. Having a birth plan is not going to change your care provider's views. So it's really, really, really important to get clear, the sooner the better, in what you would like for your birth, and does that line up with your care providers. Even if you have a front and back 2-page birth plan, which I really don't suggest, the shorter the better. The more concise we can get, the better. 1 page is wonderful, that it can be looked at and noted and maybe put up somewhere. But that's not going to take place of a supportive care provider. So here's where I'm coming back to my point that there are so many options for incredible care providers in the area. There's really no reason to stay with a care provider if what you're saying that you want doesn't align with what their standard of care is. And it does vary between care provider and care provider. And sometimes even in a group of care providers, say there's 5 to 10 doctors and 2 midwives, hey Dee, even if there's a group of care providers and you have one in that group that you just love and they are really close to you and they really support your birth wishes, that doesn't mean you're going to get them in labor. And if they're being influenced by the doctors and their care providers to induce more so on the gestational date rather than how you are doing and how baby are doing, that just doesn't line up right. And doctors and midwives, they come in shifts. They're not there for 24, 36 hours. So say your favorite midwife comes on for you at this time, well, that's awesome, but in 12 hours she's going to need to go. So then this other doctor that maybe you have had some confrontation with, or they don't really support your birth wishes, it's going to be really tricky. And by tricky, I mean that there's going to be a little bit of friction in your actual birth. And we know that women in labor need to feel safe and supported in all that they're doing, whether they're moving or would like to not have vaginal exams or need to not know how long they've been in labor or how much longer they'll be in labor. It's just really important to get in alignment with that care provider first so that it's someone that you really like and trust. That is so important. No matter what kind of birth you want, you have so many options in care providers. You have so many options in labor. There's no wrong way to do this, but I am so passionate about and feel strongly that you need to choose someone that truly respects you as a person and trusts that you will make the best decision for you and your baby, given the options, given informed consent. And informed consent is not just you've signed this paper and now we've consented you. Now we have consent to do whatever we need to do. That's not informed consent. That is like the legal side of things, but is it really? We need to have a discussion. And as the doula, we talk about what are the benefits of this procedure, what are the risks of this procedure, what is the alternative, what is my intuition telling me, and what happens if we do nothing. And I really think that this needs to be a discussion between you and your care provider in the moment. Like, it can also be discussed with your doula. But as the doula, it can be really tricky if there's no informed consent on the care provider side, on the medical side, because we're talking about like what I know and what you're looking at on Google. But it should really be a discussion and a cohesive agreement and trust between you and your care provider. That you trust that if they're suggesting XYZ, it's because they are concerned or because they have the best interest of you and baby in mind, not just because this is their standard of care or standard practice, that they don't let moms push for more than 2 hours. Because many women, there's so many variations of normal. And there's there's really fast labors, and there's 24, 36-hour long labors. There's pushing that lasts for like nothing. Moms just practically sneeze the baby out. And then there's pushing that goes on. I've seen 4 hours in my experience, and there may be longer. Of course, like, we need to start thinking about like what's going on with the baby's position, how are things going. But I've seen moms push for 4 hours and have their baby. And I know that after they've gone through that, looking back, if they were with another care provider that maybe caps their pushing at 2 hours, it would have gone a different way. So the point of this video is to share with you that you have options in how you birth your baby, and you have options in care providers in the area. There are amazing, respectful, supportive, encouraging midwives and doctors in this area. So don't just stick with who you've been going to since you were 13 and had your first period, or who your mother and your sister and your friend went to, without first having the discussion of why did they go to this care provider, what kind of birth did they want, what kind of birth did they have, did they feel informed and respected throughout the whole process. And I say this really respectfully, coming from a place of knowing that doctors have gone through a tremendous amount of schooling, have incredible experience. I don't think that anybody in this field has like these horrible intentions of just having a cesarean for the heck of it or inducing just because. I really believe that we all are doing the best with what we have. And we're doing what feels comfortable and good to us. But there's something to be said for what's comfortable and good for you might not be the same as what's comfortable and good and right for the other person. Oh, Samantha, you're so sweet. I want to read the rest of this comment. Yes, you're amazing. I'll never forget your birth, Samantha. And I really love the group that you were with. There are midwifery groups throughout Cincinnati. So we have the midwifery group at Mercy West, at Mercy East. We have the Mercy West, I said Mercy East, but I meant Mercy Anderson. Down at St. Elizabeth, there's a group of midwives. At Good Sam and Christ, there are amazing midwives. They're everywhere. Like, these incredible midwives are everywhere. These incredible doctors are all over, sprinkled throughout our city. And I do have a list that I can provide that's on my blog that has different care providers that I've had great experiences with. But I will say that I've been to, 170 births, and this list is not all-inclusive. And there are sure to be other care providers in the area that are equally supportive, and maybe I just haven't had the experience with working with them. And so please don't think if a person is not on my list, it's because they're not supportive. It's just these are who I've had great experiences with time and time again. Because there have been times where someone, is someone I would recommend and then suddenly not. Informed consent is really, really, really important to me. If there is a fine line of being on the side of the care provider and the side with women and families. I am always on the side with women and families. These are the people that hire me. These are the people that I truly believe deserve informed consent throughout their birth experience. So having a supportive care provider that you trust is much more important than a lengthy birth plan. And that's it. That's all I've got. Having a supportive care provider is much more important than having a lengthy birth plan. And in the same light, you have lots of options in birth from when you have lots of options in birth. And I can send you a sample of a birth plan if you'd like. I can send you a list of some of the care providers in the area that I know, like, and trust. And don't just go to someone who your friends have gone to, or your sister, or go to someone who is really in alignment with what you would like for your unique birth. There's no wrong way to birth your baby. If medical support is what you would like for your birth, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's your birth, your baby, your family, your health and well-being, and we all have that in mind. As a doula, that's all that I want for you, is for you to have a healthy baby and healthy mom. And I also believe in informed consent. So I hope I've driven that home for the day. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I have an awesome childbirth class coming up on the 15th and 17th of September. It's a 6-hour, 2-day class, Friday evening and Sunday afternoon. And we'll talk about all of these things. We'll talk about birth plans in depth, and we'll talk about comfort measures and techniques such as massage and counter pressure, and using aromatherapy or hydrotherapy, the water, in your birth. And we'll also talk about doing the next best thing in your birth, because sometimes you do get to 42 weeks and induction is what is best for you. And sometimes in labor it goes a long time, and getting an epidural is the next best thing for you. There's no wrong way to birth your baby, and in regards to doing it right, there's no wrong way. You will make the best decisions for you and your baby, and it's even better when you have all of the options presented to you and know where you can go next. In labor, in life, the only way we can go is forward. We're never moving backwards, always forward. So just keep going. Keep walking forward, keep going through each contraction, each stage of life. You are growing and you are opening and expanding as a person, whether you're in labor or out of labor. We're always growing, and we do it better when we're together. So I hope you have a good day, and I will see you soon. Bye.